grandfather was born to Solon Burgess and Kathleen Sutherland on June 29th, 1925 in Grimsby, Ontario. This sketch was made by his mother, my Mama Kay. And there they are. No.
Yeah,
we looked at the sketch for a good long time. So, way to go. Okay. So that's Papa Soli and Mama Kay, my grandparents.
His first name was Soli?
Yep.
That's awesome.
He survived, my dad, survived the barn cat, almost smothering him to death in the family heirloom crib. His mother tossed the cat out the bedroom window, and we still have the cradle. Both my kids have been rocked in that cradle, but we have opted for dogs. He grew up to become Dr. Lawrence Charles Norman Burgess, LCN to my mom, Jean Francis, or JF to dad. He was grandpa to Chelsea and Trent, great-grandpa to Lincoln, and Uncle Larry to my many cousins, and Larry to his sisters Beverly and Mary Jane, and his many friends. His sister, my Aunt Beverly, said someone told Larry as a child if his heart stopped, he would die. And for a little while, he would stop every once in a while and listen to see if it was still beating. When he was 9, he was hit by a car because he bent down to tie his shoe at the side of the road and did not look up to check for traffic before he crossed the road. Fortunately, the radiator cap had a spike on it, and it pierced the yoke of his windbreaker, and he ended up just hanging there. This was his first broken collarbone. The second time he broke it, he and my Aunt Beverly were given a bobsleigh for Christmas. On the farm, they went to the top of the Niagara Escarpment and went down to the lower part of it, and he fell off the bobsleigh and broke his collarbone again. Aunt Beverly just bounced off the back. Dad worked the family fruit stand in Grimsby, where he grew up. Aunt Beverly and Dad worked 3 days a week for 50 cents a day. Beverly bought her first secondhand bike with her money, and nobody knows what Larry did with his. The adults looked after the weekends. He was a buy local, support your local farmer kind of guy, always. He loved peaches, apricots, Shiro plums, and blue Concord, not Coronation grapes. Watermelon had to have seeds, and fruit had to be ripe. He who often spoke without filters said, "No one ever got fat eating fruit." My dad ran track and field and was nicknamed Baggy Pants Burgess. When he got accepted into McMaster, the family helped raise the college tuition and expenses. My Aunt Beverly told me they made cider to sell at the fruit stand, made by putting the apples on the ground, crushing the fruit with the garden hose. Now, of course, it's all made very sanitarily, and my Aunt Beverly says whatever they put in it now doesn't taste nearly as good. Is it any wonder he had such an amazing immune system? Dad spent many summers surveying the land on horseback.
Oh, sorry. There's my grandpa's butt. My bad.
On horseback, canoe, and on foot, from Texas to Tennessee to Labrador. And his dear friend Marvin Pistrang was a lifelong friend from those days. Dad went to Northwestern in Evan. Oh, wait till we do the rest of the pictures.
Yeah, there's a lot of him
being just out in the. There he is.
So awesome.
He looks so young there. It's crazy.
Wow.
There's survey.
Yeah, on the horses. There he is.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, that one.
It almost looks like there's a rabbit foot around his neck
Yeah.
or some kind of rock.
Okay, so that's
Okay, so then we go on. Okay.
I don't know why I did that.
Dad went to Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois for a master's degree. He spent his time enjoying square dancing and Chicago pizza when he was done with his academic work. He treasured his book of cowboy dances, which is actually in the basement, and has a huge collection of 78s for dancing, including tangos, original Bing Crosby White Christmas, all the old like Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, like there's a whole crap load of 78s down there. After graduation, he got a job with Shell Oil in Edmonton, where he met my mother, and they got married. Oh, go back to the one where, yeah, there he is. That's him, with the Shell Oil guys. And they got married in 1955. The Brontosaurus bone, which I carried to many a show and tell, was from their time in Edmonton, and it's up there on the shelf on the far right. That bone is a piece of a vertebrae of a brontosaurus, which he found behind our house in Edmonton. So I used to carry it to show and tell and go, this is a real dinosaur bone. There's more in the basement, but that's the one that I remember a lot. My sister Janet was born in May 1957, and I, who he always called youngest esteemed, followed in June 1961. We moved from there to Ithaca, New York, shortly thereafter, where my dad began his work on his PhD. Dad wasn't a medical doctor, he was a rock doctor. And all the rocks in that table are ones that he and I put together from his collection, because they were all in boxes in the basement. So we put them together and labeled them all. And I have, like, Patty and I are going to put the signs on them, I think, this week. That'll be a project for us. Where was I here? Yeah, his PhD was from Cornell in geology. He loved fossils and rock outcrops, and many a family trip was hijacked with his desire to unearth something with his geological hammer, which is on the mantle in the living room, the studio. And we want to celebrate the many facets of his life, like the geodes he loved. And one of his geodes is in the table down there that he gave to Chelsea. My father always knew creation was astonishing and was a lifelong environmentalist. Long before it was cool, I can't remember a time when we didn't have a compost heap and didn't recycle. When Donnie and I moved into Moorcroft and began digging out the front garden, my dad offered the compost that he'd been collecting in a garbage can in the basement. We don't know how long it had been down there. But I can tell you, the whole neighborhood could smell it when we lifted the lid to discover it was liquid. It was putrid.
We put it in the ground though. We did it.
We did it. It was, yeah.
After all that work, we weren't going to finish the job.
I spent many weekends as a young child tromping through sapsucker woods at the Cornell School of Ornithology with binoculars around my neck, learning to identify birds by their flight patterns, tails, and songs. Old Sam Peabody, 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 the song of the white-throated sparrow. Every log and rock was rolled over to discover pillbugs, sowbugs, beetles, spiders, ants, larvae, and then look at them closely with the trusty hand lens.
Oh.
This is the trusty hand lens. Where am I? Oh yeah, trusty hand lens. Yes. I was glad to be able to take Dad back to Sapsucker Woods on Father's Day a few years ago. We got to revisit the school, our house in Hasbrook, and the house on Snyder Hill Road. We even had ice cream again at the Cornell Agricultural School like the old days. Mint chocolate chip. I think we brought it home too, packed on dry ice. Across the border, I'm pretty sure. People tell me I'm a wonderful gardener. I learned a great deal of that from spending hours with him in the garden.
This is the backyard before there was
Yeah,
houses.
yeah.
This right here?
There's no
Yeah.
center point.
There's no center point.
Wow.
And these were squash.
Yeah.
So that was the field that went all the way from here to Woodruff.
See, there's power lines.
Yeah. My Aunt Beverly recalls that as a kid, he planted watermelons. Imagine that, Lincoln. He kept looking for them, but no luck. One day, our grandfather, Pepper, said to go look. He had placed one in the middle of the path. His great-grandson, Lincoln Charles, carries on the tradition, and I hide watermelons every Easter for him in lieu of chocolate eggs. I think it's genetic. My dad and I grew kale and Swiss chard long before leafy greens were trending. We grew carrots solely to attract black swallowtail butterflies and giant Hubbard squashes, which were so huge they could barely fit in the oven to my mother's dismay. My dad planted the maple tree in the backyard, which he referred to as my baby. The raspberry patch, gooseberries, and black currants still produce bumper crops every year. My parents both did volunteering. My mom used her nursing and teaching skills to be involved with Brownies and Girl Guides, and both she and my dad taught Sunday school, were involved in youth groups. They even directed the Bell's Corners United Church production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
I just want
Is
to
that
come in
the
on his pants.
outfit? Oh,
Trent, those are the anarchist pants.
Yeah, and that's the backyard. Like, wow.
Apparently that's what we call them.
That's
Just
the dining
replace
room where the
that.
French doors are now.
Did you just replace that fence recently?
Yep. Like,
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Where was I? Oh, they loved going to concerts at the NAC, the ballet, the Ottawa Little Theatre, and Orpheus musicals, and had season tickets to them all. I had the opportunity to go to all kinds of productions and concerts and caught the fever for the arts early on. They made sure I had ballet, piano, swimming, singing lessons, just to name a few, and my dad drove me faithfully to them all. We had the chance to spend summers at camps, canoe tripping, sailing, water skiing, and more. My dad loved poetry, Keats, Wordsworth, the Psalms, and of course his own. He wrote Christmas poems every year to tell family and friends what we were going on in our family. And when he wrote me at university or from his many trips abroad, there was always a poem on the envelope or on the postcard. Right? You guys always got Christmas poems from Dad. He loved Barrett's quotations and puns and word puzzles. My dad was fortunate to travel the world, from Hawaii in the 50s to Brazil, to Europe, to Oman, and the Caribbean. But he treasured his most recent trip to Israel the most. When he gave his heart to Jesus, he longed to go see the Holy Land, and I am so glad he got to go. He was pro-Israel, to say the least, and he stood with Israel, and you all can have a souvenir button from the charcuterie table to prove it. Each of them pulled off of a sweater or a coat he had. He was baptized in the River Jordan when he was there. We celebrated so many Jewish holidays, my kids would query, "Hey Grandpa, are we Jewish?" My dad loved to eat. You wouldn't know it by his size, but he loved good eating. He was an adventurous eater. He was always ordering the strangest thing he could find on the menu. He wanted his fish with the head on and the eyeball looking at you. He always wanted the neck of the turkey at Christmas and Thanksgiving. When we moved back into Moorcroft, we got to be 3 generations and then 4 all under one roof. Family dinners were precious, and we did dinner and a movie nights that consisted of old family slideshows, with many of those slides being pictures of plane wings over every country he visited. Everybody living under one house is not the norm these days, but we treasure that time. I am blessed that we got to spend so many Thanksgivings, Christmases, birthdays, Easters, Father's Day, and yes, even Yom Kippurs with him. Just before COVID hit, we took him to Upper Canada Village for an old-fashioned turkey dinner and a walk through the Christmas lights. He was always game for an adventure or a road trip. When my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and had to be moved into a long-term care home, my dad was lost without her. He faithfully visited her at Longfield's home, and when she was moved to Peter D. Clark, he walked and rode his bike to visit her most days of the week. He brought her fruit, pickled herring, and played her music for those 10 years until she finally passed in August 2020. She was the love of his life. Dad lived life on his own terms and got to live a long, full 96 years as a healthy man, riding his bike even last summer to come and visit at the house. Despite all his knowledge, he surrendered that knowledge to his faith. I do wish the end was different and we had more time, but my heart is full and not crushed. It's hard to forget somebody who gave you so much to remember. We will always have maple sugar leaves in our stocking, Dad, and you in our hearts.
Oh, that's so cute.
The Gene part's coming after now.
Oh, the Gene part is coming? Okay, awesome.
Sorry,
There's
this
the
is-
Gene. That's okay. It's all good. There they
There's
are.
just so many great pictures in here.
Yeah. There's her with Lincoln.
Yeah.
There you are, Lincoln.
Eating ginger.
Eating ginger. Yeah, and feeding her ginger and the pickled herring.
And this is when COVID hit.
Yeah, the bad haircut. That was because he couldn't get a
He
haircut.
looked like a crazy old man to me. I've never seen him like that. I was like, you look, there he is. That's better. That's the spirit.
That's post haircut.
That's post haircut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally let him have a haircut.
With the button,
Yeah.
right? With the button.
That's, I
Right, so
never
the-
knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that's his last Father's Day here on the bike.
Yeah, we had fried chicken in the park.
Looked like he packed his overnight blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Picnic.
basket.
That's the
of our-
picnic.
big
Yeah,
basket.
that's the picnic basket.
Aw.
Yeah, I miss seeing him all the time. Spotted Grandpa at College Square.
Yeah. Yeah. So there we go.
Wow.
That was beautiful. I never knew a lot of those things.